So what we are seeing is that the virus has evolved, or the pandemic, from an acute phase, as the WHO is saying, we are over the acute phase of the pandemic. But they didn't tell you that the pandemic is now evolving to a chronic phase. And this chronic phase, the suboptimal immune forces that are now playing, are not only, because those things go hand in hand, promoting immune escape, but also in tandem, promoting immune pathology. And that is exactly what we are seeing. And of course, the virus is continuing to evolve and will ultimately, there is no doubt, immunologically speaking, there is no doubt about this, will overcome this very last resistance by these suboptimal forces. When that happens, of course, when the last hurdle of resistance is gone, is breached, then of course there is no immune resistance whatsoever left in the vaccinated population. There is immune defense left, of course, in the unvaccinated population, because those guys have, during this whole trajectory, have been able to train their cell-mediated innate immunity. That has not happened with the vaccines. I've explained this multiple times in several different interviews and in several different articles.
Well, I want to ask you, Dr. Van der Bosch, in terms of, long COVID, the rising cancers, and people just becoming sick with all sorts of illnesses. Now, a lot of people attribute that to the dangers of the injections. They are causing multiple different illnesses and excess deaths around the world. Are you saying, though, that this is basically because their immune systems are, for the layman, destroyed? They're not able to fight off diseases and illnesses that they would normally be able to fight off?
Yeah. Well, Maria, again, it's a very difficult topic. I will try to be very concise. There is a misunderstanding. People are often talking about exhaustion, etc. The right word to use here is immune dysregulation. Because remember, we still have continuously reinfections, re-exposure by a virus that is now incredibly infectious, much more infectious than the original Omicron variants that were already way more infectious than the previous variants. So their immune system is still, to some extent, able to contain the virus, right? And remember, they are still, to some extent, protected against severe disease. So what is happening is really dysregulation. And is it the virus or the vaccine? To your question, no, the reason for this are the vaccine breakthrough infections, hence the virus, but only in vaccinated people. So it is, in fact, the vaccination that has led to the generation of Omicron. Omicron has led to the vaccine breakthrough infections. These vaccine breakthrough infections, as I just explained, have led to suboptimal immunity that on one hand side has led to an imperfect control of the viral replication and has secondarily led, and is still leading, to immune pathology, including cancer. So it is this complex interplay of repetitive virus breakthrough infections in highly vaccinated people that is responsible for both immune escape and immune pathology that go hand in hand. It's just that at this time, the immune pathology is more obvious than the disease because, frankly speaking, acute cases of COVID-19 disease, acute hospitalizations, acute rates of acute death have tremendously dropped, right? And this is what is so insidious that, in fact, at this stage, the virus is evolving in a very silent way. The clinical symptoms are still to some extent under control, but what you see right now is still a virus that is strongly evolving, and many of the vaccinees, because the disease is relatively under control are now shedding the virus in an asymptomatic way, which is just promoting further spread.
Well,
and you can imagine,
what we know
as
is
with
that,
an army,
well,
there is a limit to all this. There is a limit to the immune defense.
Sure.
Even if you call the reservists, there is a limit, right? And that limit will soon be reached. There is no doubt about this. I have made a mistake in my timeline at the beginning. I apologize for this, but what was the reason? I have not taken into account that reservists would be called in, and the reservists is nothing else than the immune refocusing, the fact that the immune system could catch up to some extent, but insufficient to control the virus. In the meantime, virus infections have been prolonged, which has enabled the unvaccinated population to train better and better to become almost like completely resistant to the virus. And that is what is ultimately going to generate the herd immunity that we need to completely end this pandemic.
This is what you said to me a very long time ago. You said the unvaccinated are the ones who are going to help us generate herd immunity, and certainly we see the health in general of the unvaccinated being vastly superior to those that have had the injections.
Absolutely.
What I want to note is that we've had warnings that another pandemic is coming, and Disease X and the WHO is preparing with their amendments to the international health regulations and also the CA+ or pandemic treaty, or all the different names that they give it, to basically resume world power through a medical dictatorship of sorts, based on the fact that another pandemic is coming. So they clearly know they're preparing for something. I can see how what you're describing could be, that type of situation could be used to declare another emergency.
Yeah, interestingly enough, Maria, this new virus that will ultimately be the dictator, it will be the only one that is still able to overcome all these immune hurdles. That virus will look very, very differently. It will no longer be a SARS-CoV-2 virus. It will still be a coronavirus, but of a completely different type because of several different mutations, not only in spike protein, but also in other viral proteins. It will have a different glycosylation profile. For people who don't understand the term glycosylation, this is the sugar coat on the virus that nobody's talking about, will also completely change. So this virus will indeed be looking very, very differently from SARS-CoV-2, which could be a reason for health authorities to say, see, we have warned you, a new virus would pop up. No, it is the direct consequence of the continuous vaccine breakthrough infections that are responsible for the derailment of the immune system. And the vaccine breakthrough infections have originated from Omicron, which was a scourge, not a blessing, because Omicron directly resulted from the mass vaccination campaigns during a pandemic, not being able to control the virus while exerting immune pressure on the virus.
Dr. Van den Bosch, you've made the statements where we've got a couple of minutes left here today. You've made the statements that antivirals will be crucial for people. Obviously, ivermectin has performed incredibly well. Is this still your position?
The opposition.
Your position.
I'm strongly, of course, recommending people to take those antivirals, because when we will see this virus popping up, which I expect, really, I said, and I maintain these timelines, and I promise everybody, I will no longer change those timelines. I said 50% chances that it happens before the end of April, 99% chances that it happens before the end of June. But what will be the features of those viruses is that it will cause enhanced severe disease, not only severe, enhanced severe disease. So using those antivirals at the time where symptoms start will be too late. People will need to take them prophylactically. And this is not a joke. I said, and I predicted, that these health authorities, the same that in fact were censoring the use of ivermectin, will will see themselves forced to issue mandates for ivermectin and antivirals, because it will be the only way to a large extent to reduce the losses, because what you have to do is to prevent the vaccine breakthrough infections. So you have to prevent infections. If their immune system can no longer do this of the vaccinees, you have to intervene, almost not with mass vaccination, for God's sake, but with mass antiviral prophylactic treatment.
Well, let me
in the USA, our chief public health agency, which is the Center for Disease Control, CDC, continues to push shots and boosters and continues to lie about the safety and efficacy of the vaccine. How damaging is that kind of behavior to the authority of science?
It is extremely damaging. Of course, it is extremely damaging. But, you know, I'm always saying, if you commit errors or even crimes at a very small scale, you can hide them. Right? And I have seen this happening with the Ebola vaccination in West Africa a number of years ago. This was also criminal. It was completely hidden. I revealed, disclosed everything, sent my reports all over the world, but it was complete silence. However, if you do this at a very large scale, like what has been done with this mass vaccination campaign, the truth will surface. The truth will surface, and those who have committed these crimes have been lying to the people and have not been taken care of their health and the safety of people, will be severely, severely punished. So it's also a matter of patience. But you have also to understand that if these people would now go out and say, oh, wait a minute, yeah, we have been making some mistakes, it wasn't all right, we have to correct them, and we have to revise our opinion, these people would be stoned in the street, right? They have no choice. They have no choice other than to stick, even if they completely see how wrong they have been, they have no other choice. They can only hope that something will happen that will distract from this issue, that will distract it, but it won't. And so they keep silent, or they just continue along the path that they have been walking along so far. But I can tell you that many of them must be desperate. But, being together, they feel protected. This is a big lobby. This is a big lobby, and they think that everybody thinks that the other will protect them, right? Which is not the case. But this is this typical feeling. You all have committed crimes, but you are a big group, and it's like the mafia. And you feel all together, you feel like a big team, and nobody can penetrate into the team, etc. It will collapse because the truth will surface. This has been a large-scale experiment of gain of function on the very human population. This is something that will be reported in history for many, many generations to come, much longer than the talks that have, taken place after World War I and World War II, etc.
Were you aware of the activities in the background in recent years of Peter Daszak and the EcoHealth Alliance and Fauci and Ralph Barrick at the University of North Carolina, and the other characters who were involved in the development of the COVID-19 and perhaps in the vaccines themselves?
No, I was, of course, retrospectively, I have also read, well, not a lot, but I've read some key documents, and yeah, I must say, to some extent, it also blew me away, right? But
It
I was
seems
not.
it
Yeah,
seems nefarious, actually.
yeah. That is, yeah. Of course, but again, my viewpoint is that what has currently happened, or what is currently happening, that we have been turning through this mass vaccination a relatively harmless virus, I mean, not completely harmless, but relatively harmless. We have been turning this through massive gain of function into really a weapon of mass destruction, right? And that is the thing we first have to deal with. You know, every time in business, you have to prioritize. Well, if there is one thing that I put on the very top of the list, then it is how are we going to deal with the kind of virus that is circulating right now and is in no regard when it comes to its biological properties comparable to the kind of Wuhan virus that invaded our countries 4 years ago. And this will be the big topic. For me, it's the only big topic. All the rest, you know, we will have to deal with it afterwards. But I'm sure that many of the topics that are now on the agenda will simply be cancelled for, you know, for many reasons. Not to hide things, but, you know,
For example, which topics are you
well,
speaking
for
of?
example, the origin of the virus, many of the lawsuits, etc., will all be cancelled. These are things that take a lot of time. You know, people don't imagine. Most people think I'm just a crazy man, but what I'm really predicting is a massive, massive tsunami. And then you have to see, you know, you have hundreds of items on your agenda, but if such a thing happens, I mean, many of these agenda points just get wiped off the table, of course. So I think the trick is to be able to concentrate on what is most important. And I'm not saying that all of the other topics on the agenda are not important. They are very important, but we will have to deal with the most important things first and see what is left then to deal with. But to your point, I've also been surprised with all what's going on or what has been going on behind the scene, where people have this kind of very, very suspicious research projects and to some extent want to patent things or patenting things, viruses that then ultimately appear to be the circulating virus in the population. So how does that rhyme? It's very, very difficult. I don't know, but I'm a scientist and I'm saying the most important from a scientific viewpoint is now the threat of the currently circulating virus, given the dysregulated immune response in millions of vaccinated people, right?
Now, you've said very clearly in more than once that you expected a great deal of trouble in a fairly quick time frame upcoming in the months ahead. What can people do who are worried about their immune systems? We know here in the USA we have a number of organized doctors such as Peter McCullough and his group who have various treatment protocols for vaccination problems, namely spike proteins that's circulating in people's system. Do you have any idea on your own what people might do in the face of this problem?
Yeah. Well, James, you are recording all this, and I'm very happy about this because nobody believes me. Nobody, even these frontline doctors, don't believe me when I say, guys, none of your treatments will work because it will go too fast. It will go extremely fast. It will be a hyperacute tsunami, right? Where people who start to show symptoms will pass away within 24 hours, right?
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, nobody believes me. Of course, nobody believes me. That is why it is good and it is exceptional that you can record my words. And yeah, in the sense that, okay, I mean, it is documented, right? So because what happens is that what is deteriorating the situation is every single reinfection, re-exposure of people who have been vaccinated. And you will see, and you know, you can write this down, or it is recorded. You will see that what will happen, for example, in the next coming weeks, is that you will see that we will have more and more cases of more and more serious long COVID. Please remind it, more cases, a higher prevalence of more cases and more severe cases of long COVID.
That is the chronic presentation of the disease.
They will start to replace the surge of the cancers, right? So things will go, so we go, remember, from an acute disease, I just explained it, acute self-limiting. Now we have a more chronic phase. It will end with a hyperacute phase, a huge wave. And of course, nobody, you know, I've been studying this like for 4 years. I know what I'm talking about. I'm probably the only person, in all modesty, who understands the immunology behind this. And so what I can advise, and I have done many videos to make people aware, to all the vaccinated people, is that they should start, what do they need to do? Well, they need to avoid reinfection. It's very simple, because it's the reinfection that is now the cause. The reinfection in the vaccinated people, that is what the culprit is. That is what is responsible for deteriorating the situation. So if your immune system cannot avoid infection, what can you do? Well, the only thing you can do is very simple, is take antivirals, of course. The only difference is that you will not be able to wait for taking these antivirals till you have symptoms. So what I'm advising is, as soon as people see that in one or the other country, one or the other state, for example, in the United States, this thing starts with, you know, hospitalizations and deaths going up very rapidly, they need to take antivirals prophylactically, not wait till they have any symptoms. Because I can tell you, I'm in Belgium. If it starts in the US, or if it starts in Israel, or if it starts in the UK, I bet you that within a few days, you will see the same scenario in many of these highly vaccinated countries, but not in Africa, of course. No problems with long COVID in Africa. There will be no tsunami in Africa, right?
Yeah.
Because it's herd immunity. We don't have herd immunity.
And low vaccination rate.
Of course.
Now, when you say antiviral, are we talking about these pharmaceuticals that were demonized by the public health, ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine and others like it?
You have been following the evolution of the FDA, their position towards ivermectin in the recent days?
Yes, well, they seem to be making a pivot.
Yeah. You know, what I have been predicting already half a year ago, that the public health authorities are finally going to have mandates for ivermectin vaccination. I mean, this seems a little bit hilarious, right? But that is the kind of evolution that we are going to see, because which antivirals could you use? Listen, when you hear Pierre Corrie and other experts, I mean, the results with ivermectin are fabulous. It is very safe. It is the only antiviral that is cost effective, that is widely available can be supplemented in sufficient quantities, and that is safe. There is simply no alternative. Yeah, maybe hydroxychloroquine, etc. But this is, let's say, the same ball game. And the public health authorities will come too late with their ivermectin mandates. But you see already how they are evolving, how their position is evolving.
Also, you can see how that, if they do that, that will really disorder the reputation of medicine.
But
worse than it already is.
Who cares?
Well, it's not so much.
Wait a minute. You know, the thing I want your audience to understand is that what we will be facing in terms of the hyper-acute COVID crisis that is imminent is that we will have, and that is the positive news, we will have to build a completely new world, right? So there won't be the FDA anymore, or all these folks, you know, I don't know where they will be going, you know. What will happen to them, it's very uncertain. But it's very, very clear that when this starts, our hospitals will collapse. And when the hospitals collapse, that means that the chaos, in all kinds of layers of society, financial, economic, social, you name it, you know, the chaos will be complete, right? And that is what I'm very clearly predicting. And I'm not a fool. I'm a scientist, right? Mm-hmm. I insist people can look at my curriculum. I've been talking like 4 years about this. I've written many, many articles. People can ask me questions. I'm teaching online courses, lectures on epidemiology and pandemics and epidemics, etc. And, you know, it's very strange for me to make such statements. But, you know, I'm not hiding it because I'm 200% convinced that it will happen.
One final question. Have you been personally persecuted for spreading this information? Because that's certainly the case in the USA, where doctors have opposed the public health establishment and the medical establishment. Have you been under attack?
Well, I've been a little bit under attack in Belgium by a bunch of, immunologically or scientifically illiterate journalists, etc. But I've not really been suffering. But listen, of course, I have my strategy. First of all, I've been lucky. Why? Because I'm still, a veterinary doctor, right? I'm not a medical doctor. I have not a practice in medical, I've not a medical practice. And secondarily, I've never been naming certain names. You know, I've never been attacking people individually. When I talk about, idiots, public health authorities, etc., I have no problem if I talk about the WHO, but I'm not going to cite particular names, for example. And the third thing is that everything I'm saying, even if I make very strong statements, I can back them up with scientific data, right? My discourse is scientific. I'm a scientific activist, right? But I'm not the guy who turns to conspiracies or things that I cannot prove or that I don't know for sure. Not necessarily pretending they're wrong, but if I don't know it for sure, you won't hear me about this. If it's not my field of expertise, I will delegate it to other people, etc. But I will always very clearly express my opinion on the things I know without attacking people in person, right? So, I've not been suffering too much. And also, being in Belgium, I've primarily been speaking in the US and abroad, not that much in my country, because I wanted to reach as many people as possible. Yeah. If I give an interview in Belgium, there is 30 people who will watch. If I do it on a US platform, I can add a few zeros, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, this has certainly been and is going to continue to be a very strange period of world history. Yeah. I want to thank you very much for coming on the podcast. And this will be a bit of a cold shower for a lot of listeners out there. But I think your message is very important, and we should be very careful of how human affairs proceed in the months ahead. So thank you very much, Dr. Gert van den Bosch. Is there any particular website that you have that you would encourage listeners to go to for information?
Yeah, well, we publish all the information, all my articles, interviews, etc., are published on the website Voice for Science and Solidarity. So Voice for Science and Solidarity, because I think these are two notions that are very important to science, and also solidarity, no discrimination whatsoever towards vaccinated people. Like, it was also completely ridiculous to discriminate or, the unvaccinated at the beginning of these vaccination campaigns.
Yeah.
So there people can find the information, and I'm sorry for the harsh message, but I'm always saying somebody needs to tell the truth. And since I'm 200% convinced of what I'm saying, I dare to do so. Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you very much for daring to do that. And we'll stand by and see how this plays out.